Hey guys, Cats here. I know I don't really post a lot of edited content on this channel, but since the flight model has been broken in a little by now, and I occasionally see some misconceptions about ships' suitability for racing, I wanted to do a quick comparison of the ships that are available for the Arena Commander racetracks as of now, just to get a general idea of how well they perform. If you just want to know what the best racing ship is, let me save you some time, it's still the M50. If you want to know how your favorite ship compares to the rest of the pack without sitting through the entire video, I've linked the data spreadsheet in the video description. So, what I did is I rented almost all of the ships that are available with rental equipment credits and took them for a few laps on the most basic racetrack, Old Vanderval. I then wrote down whatever crash-free lap time I was able to achieve within a few laps and compiled it into a scoreboard with over 40 different ships. For a better comparison, all the ships are using their stock loadouts and were undamaged at the time of recording their respective best lap time. This is relevant especially for the lighter racing ships, as reduced mass from removed weaponry results in higher acceleration values and better potential lap times. These times are by no means the end-all be-all, but I feel like they give a good enough general idea of how well a ship performs on the non-atmospheric racetracks. There were some surprising results, and some of the ships have certain quirks that I'm going to talk about a little more later on. So let's get to it, starting with the slowest of the bunch, or rather the ones that never made it to the starting line. Since you can rent them in Arena Commander, but you can't use them in racing, I spent a lot of rec on the Aegis Retaliator, the Misk Freelancer, and the RSI Constellation, but those aren't allowed on the racetrack, probably because CIG felt that they are too big for some reason. So yeah, those didn't even start. Bringing up the rear is the DraganFlyer. Surprisingly, because it's a decent bike on the ground, for some reason it overheats after just a few seconds, even without afterburner, when you take it on the racetrack. So very slow to fly. Notice that it's not me doing the flying in this one. Pelcki is helping me out with the video by piloting a few of his own ships, because the DraganFly, as a few other ships, cannot be rented with rental equipment credits right now, and I still wanted to include them in the list. Coming in as the second to last ship is the other space bike, the Aurora. It is a little snappier than the DraganFly, but it still suffers from the same major problems. It's overheating constantly and it's just not going very fast because of it. It was able to achieve 2 minutes, 6 seconds and 27 milliseconds. Next up is the DrakeHerelet, which looks like a giant engine from behind. It sounds great for racing, but really it's only good as long as you don't have to turn it around, because cornering is a nightmare. I had to take several attempts to even finish a lap without crashing horribly, and I had to do it in decoupled mode because I could not fly my normal racing lines at all. I was able to get a 155.70 in the end, but it's definitely not a good experience, and I was quite disappointed. I thought it would be a little faster. Beating the Herald by quite a bit is the Misk Prospector. Again, Pelcki doing the flying here because I do not own one, and the best lap he was able to do in the Prospector was 1 minute 35.06. Next is the Aegis Eclipse. At 1 minute 26.37 seconds, it's a giant bomber and it flies accordingly, no surprises here. Coming in just in front of the Eclipse is the Argo MPUV transport version, finishing the Old Vanderval lap in 1 minute 25.62. Everybody's favorite space turtle, the Anvil Terrapin, is taking it slow and steady and does the track in 1 minute 15.81. The Anvil Valkyrie is a little faster than the Terrapin and is able to complete a lap in 1 minute 10 seconds and 97. The MISC-reliant core or Cory is barely able to fit into the starting tunnel with its default vertical orientation, but can fortunately swap its cockpit layout around without going into VTOL mode, and finishes the track in 1 minute 6 seconds, 0.65. Pelcki in the Anvil Pisces, or Pisces, I don't know how to pronounce it, was able to beat the Reliance lap time by a few seconds and got a 1 minute 2 second 06 run in the Anvil ship. Just ahead of the Anvil Pisces is the Drake Cutlass Black, clocking in at just barely over 1 minute, which is not a bad time considering it's a big ship with a heavy cargo capacity. The first ships to break the 1 minute barrier are the trusty RSI Auroras. I tested the Legionnaire and the Mercantile version, but honestly the other ones are just in the same vicinity. There's very slight differences in thruster power between the versions, so they should all be around the 58-59 second mark roughly. The Aopoa Catual. This is a very special ship, and it always has been. It barely fits the starting tunnel, so you're well advised to swap into landing configuration to get out and start the race. The new flight model has also changed the ship a little bit. The thruster layout or configuration on this ship has always been unique, and logically speaking it should help with maneuvering. When one engine is overheated, the other ones should be able to maintain its functionality, but that's just not the case. It's locking up in a certain direction, so you're suffering from the same issues that normal ships have, and the ship is a lot bulkier, so you're at a disadvantage. Funny enough, you can switch to landing mode, and it's also going to alter your thruster output. So once you overheat in landing mode, you can just keep turning like normal. Braking power is also greatly increased in landing mode. You can slow down very fast, faster than most of the competitive racing ships. But unfortunately it's sacrificing its forward acceleration capacities, so you're not going quite as fast in landing mode. Best I was able to do in normal mode was 57.24. This one was a bit of a disappointment. The Aegis Sabre Raven used to be a decent racer a few versions back, but for some reason right now it seems to have thruster issues, and same as the DraganFlyer and Nox, it is also constantly overheating even though you're not even pushing the ship. Best lap time was 57.14. The Drake Cutlass Red is a pretty speedy ambulance and is able to go around the track a lot faster than the Black Cutlass, finishing at just 56.99. Right next to the Cutlass Red is a ship that looks a little faster than it actually is. The Kruger Intergalactic P-52 Merlin comes in at 56.04. Completing a hot lap in just 55.87 seconds is Aegis Dynamics' surprisingly quick little bomber, the Gladiator. Very close in terms of lap time, but a little more fun to fly and probably with a bit more potential for improved lap times is the Anvil Hurricane at 55.54 seconds. Moving up the list, we come to the first real quote-unquote racing ship, the Greyza EX. Though to be fair, it's not really a racing ship anymore, it's a stealth ship, and you definitely notice. Comparing it to the base model Greyza, the thrusters are weaker and the forward acceleration is quite lackluster. In the end, it just barely gets past the 55 second mark and scores 54.95. The exotic Banu Defender, which is once again piloted by Pelcki as it's not available for rent, is able to outrun the Greyza EX by just a little bit and goes around one lap of Old Vanderval in 54.30 seconds. The supercharged Greyza LX is the luxury or drag racing version of the Greyza, and just like the EX, it's worse than the base model. It costs more if you rent it in Arena Commander for some reason, and it was marketed for straight line racing, I believe. It just doesn't really fit the racetracks very well. It's a lot slower than the base version, comes in at 53.64. So in my testing, the Greyza LX actually got beaten in lap time by the Xperia Glaive, the first Vanguard ship on the list. The ship is pretty to look at from the outside, but it's a little heavy to fly. I mean, I guess it's alright considering it's a dogfighter and this is not really its home territory. And as long as you can manage to drift it around the corners, it can actually complete the course in a reasonable time. I was able to do 52.83 seconds. Despite being a rather large ship, the Aegis Vanguard Warden is actually quite snappy around the turns and manages to score a 51.50. The base model of the Aegis Sabre, just like the Raven counterpart, is also prone to overheating and does not really feel responsive around the corners. Nonetheless, it can at least score a 51.18 in a decent lap. The slowest Origin Jumpworks ship in testing is the 85X Limited. This two-seater craft is able to do a lap on Old Vanderval in 50.18 seconds. Next Vanduul ship is Theis. It is a little more agile than its bigger brother, the Glaive, and it goes around the Old Vanderval lap in just 49.47 seconds. The other major starting ship besides the Aurora, the Mustang Alpha, is able to get a lap time of 48.72, but it's noteworthy that it's very drifty and you need to countersteer a lot to keep it on track. Just ahead of the Mustang Alpha is Anvil's Hornet F7C Super or Super Hornet. Unsurprisingly a little heavier than the base model Hornet. It has 2 seats and the turret after all, and it finishes the Old Vanderval lap in 48.67. The fastest Vanduul ship in testing is the Bengal Blade. The outside design of the ship is a little more fancy than the other Vanduul ships, and the inside is equally as creative. There's a giant strut running from left to right, just in your field of vision during upward turns, which is kind of annoying, but luckily there is a sunroof above it, so you have some visibility at least. Best lap is 48.54. So we arrive at the 300 series of Origin Jumpworks. The 300i is the base model, and it used to actually be a really good racer. On some versions it was able to keep up with the Greyza. It has gotten a little slower ever since the rework of the 300 series. You can definitely feel that it's a little heavier now, but that just fits the ship's reputation and overall looks, so it's fine. Best lap I was able to do in the current version is 46.88. The Drake Buccaneers actually a lot better at racing than the shape of the ship or its reputation would suggest. Sometimes it's hard to get it around checkpoints because of the huge wings, but nonetheless it is able to do a lap in 45.93. Anvil's Hornet F7C base model is a bit lighter and more agile and can run a lap in 45.70. Consolidated Outlands Mustang racing versions are next. The Gamma and the Omega have identical thruster values, so I'm just including the Omega in my comparison. It's reasonably fast, but considering it's marketed as a pure racing ship, it still falls a little bit short of expectations. It's also a very wild ride. Similar to the Mustang Alpha, the ship just feels a little unstable and volatile, but then again I guess it's a Mustang, so maybe it comes with the brand. Best lap time was 44.49. The Anvil Hawk is a lot easier to fly and a little faster as well. Best I could do was 44.26. Barely missing the top 5 finishers is the Aegis Avenger Titan, which is still a surprisingly good result for a several hundred-year-old police ship, and honestly, it is no business being as good on the track as it is. What is special about this ship is that out of a lot of the non-racing ships, I felt like it handled the best, or at least it's very predictable in terms of handling, which is making it a good ship for learning. Another aspect that is helping the Avenger get to an amazing 42.94 second lap time is the fact that it can keep not only turning but also accelerating forward while its main engine is overheated. So basically you can just keep using afterburner and you don't have to worry about it ruining your day whenever you hit an overheat, because the ship stays responsive the entire time. Next fastest ship and the top 5 finisher is the Aegis Gladius. You've probably seen videos of this ship zipping around canyons and doing races on Microtech and stuff. The Gladius is a solid choice for atmospheric racing, and it is no different on the Arena Commander racetracks. Same as the Avenger, it is able to stay responsive during overheats. You can just keep going forward even when your main engine is overheating, so that also helps. I found the cockpit glass a little annoying because it's blurry and you can't really read the displays very well because of it, but it still handles well and it is able to get a 42.91. Fourth place goes to the base model, or the blue Miss Greyza, which is not bad per se, but considering that the ship was designed from ground up to be a top level racing ship, it's just underperforming a little bit right now. It's achieving 42.89 seconds, but it still stays behind the 350 and the M50 by a fair margin with that time. Hopefully we will see more balancing or different racetracks where the Greyza can shine again, because right now it is just too drifty to keep up with the 350R and the M50. You're not going to win in a competitive setting when you're using a Greyza, that's just the sad truth. Third place goes to the reworked Origin Jumpworks 350R. The ship has gotten a little worse with the rework, unfortunately, but as I mentioned, the heavy feeling of it is quite fitting and it is still okay-ish. It can't keep up with an M50, but honestly, considering the size of the ship, that makes sense. With some drifting and heavy counter steering, it can do Old Vanderval in 41.14 seconds. Second place goes to a ship that is not actually a racing ship, but still outperforms the Greyzas and the 350. It's the Anvil Arrow, which is kind of funny because it was really awful when it was introduced. If you remember the Arrow commercial, it was darting in and out of asteroid fields and looked very agile. At its introduction date, it just wasn't. It was horrible around the track. But CIG turned the ship around and now it's amazing to fly. Handling is great, it's very responsive, and acceleration is also awesome. Best lap time I did was 40 seconds and 0.8. Coming in at 39.22 seconds even on a stock loadout, and handily taking first place is the Origin M50 Interceptor. So this ship has been the fastest ship in Star Citizen for a long time. After 2.4 or 2.5 it took first place from the 350R, and with the exception of Alpha 3.1 where the Greyza actually was king of the racetrack, it has always been the best racing ship ever since. Ship handling feels nice, you don't drift too much in this, acceleration is extraordinary, and stopping power is quite adequate. It's at least a lot better than the Greyza and the 350. So basically it's flying in a class of its own right now. I would like to have a little more diversity in racing, especially at the top level, so that there are at least 2 ships that can compete with one another and get similar lap times. But I also realize that racetrack performance is not a good way to balance ships overall. And that concludes my little comparison. As I said earlier, take these times with a grain of salt, as there is certainly room for improvement in the lap times. If I made any major errors, please let me know. As a matter of fact, if you're able to put down a faster lap or want to add a ship to the list, please shoot me a message and I'll try to update the spreadsheet accordingly. Also, if you have some feedback or want to see me cover a different racing related topic, please let me know in the comments. Thanks a lot for watching. I hope I could give you a general idea of ships' performance levels, and I'll see you on the racetrack.